all of a sudden you've got a major water quality problem.
A river is the lifeblood of an ecosystem, just like the veins and arteries bring blood to every part of our organism. When we have choked arteries, that's what's called a heart attack. A dam is the choking of the artery of the planet.
So we really have to face the crisis here that what we were taught in school, that this finite amount of water could never run out, is technically true. But if you can't access it because you took it from an aquifer and you poured it into a desert to grow cotton, or you polluted it, it's of no use to us. And that's what we need to get into our heads. And there's nowhere to go in the world to get away from this. Rich people and people who live in water-rich countries will get away from it longer than people who are facing it now. But the world water crisis will face us all. But if there is going to be one single thing that is going to slam us into reality, it is going to be running out of water.
We see all sorts of fresh water in our lakes and say, well, you know, what's the problem? We've got lots of fresh water. Once you drain a lake, that's it. There is no more water. We have to start focusing in on what is the renewable supply, which comes through the hydrologic cycle. We are creating a situation where we have less and less of that renewable supply left. And with the help of water scientists, we have to really start to assess how much water we really do have to work with. What is that renewable supply, and trying to define it. That's the task at hand. We must be able to find out what the limits are and how to live within them.
But instead of our governments coming together and saying, we have a limited amount of time to come together and find a solution, what they've done is they've handed power over to big water companies who want to create a kind of water cartel.
Suez, Veolia, which used to be Vivendi, and RWE Thames. And these companies are all in the top 100 top corporations. I mean, the water division of Suez has 400,000 employees. I mean, try saying no to them if you're a little third world country, right?
So that one day, every single drop of fresh water in the world will be privately owned and controlled.
Up until the 1980s, really, if water was privatized, they were companies within a country. So France was mostly privatized, but the companies that then became the giants were just French companies delivering water locally.
Water privatization in France, because of the multinationals that are so powerful there, and because of their long history there, is so ingrained that even the president of France wasn't able to stop it.
François, à un certain moment de son mandat, a été rappelé à l'ordre, si je puis dire, par cette dictature économique, et il n'a pas pu nationaliser les entreprises de l'eau. C'est un système qui est très puissant, c'est une machine qui est sans état d'âme.
And then in the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher came to power, and the Thatcher Revolution came into effect, and she privatized all the water in Great Britain. And that's when these big companies decided that they could start going global. At the same time, the UN was beginning to explore the language of water as an economic good and a commodity. And the very first time was at a very important conference in Dublin in 1992, which for the first time named water as a good. So you get the Thatcher-Reagan market economy ideology growing over here. You've got the companies all ready to go because they've been delivering inside nation states. And now you've got the UN saying, okay, we're ready to start thinking about water differently. It's not a right. So it all kind of converged together. Well, the World Bank is created after the Second World War to bring financial stability and development to the developing world. And it's supposed to be pooled money from the wealthier countries to help develop the global south. However, what's happened is that the World Bank has hooked up with the three big water private service companies in Europe. They basically started to work their way into the developing world. And the World Bank would say, in exchange for debt relief, now we want you to privatize water. The WTO comes in with rules that basically established this in a new constitutional framework. It's run by what's called the Quad, which is the United States, Canada, the European Union, and Japan. And the Quad makes all the decisions. It's their corporations that set the agenda. They decide when the meetings are going to be held. And they had thousands of military police with, the full riot gear and so on. And the farmers had a huge march. And the head of South Korean Farmers Union is a man named Lee Kyung-hae. And he came from a devastated community where people were killing themselves. He climbed up on this police barricade. He took a knife and stabbed himself in the heart, rocked back and forth on top of this fence, and fell. He died a couple of hours later in the hospital. And this became an enormously important symbol. These trade rules are not some dry academic thing on a piece of paper. These are rules that affect people's lives, and these are rules that are killing people. This is the new colonialism. It doesn't come in ships.
But we've heard the facts at this meeting. We've heard about the underachievement and the failures of privatization. And we know that ultimately these corporations aren't accountable to the communities that they serve. They're accountable to their shareholders, and nothing's going to change that.
People think that water privatization is just a problem in the global south and the developing world, but that's just simply not the case. We have the very same situation in the U.S. It's the very same story, whether it's in Atlanta, Georgia, or Buenos Aires, Argentina.
It was a big push at the time. Privatization was the word. Everybody wanted to privatize something. And frankly, I'm not opposed to privatization. We privatize our recycling pickup, but this water was different. But we did sign a contract with United Water for 20 years for operation and maintenance of our water system.
For these companies, when their name has been tarnished because of their malpractice and their mismanagement, it can be a big advantage to use another name. Suez often uses the name Ondeo, and very rarely the brand Suez is visible. And the same, of course, with Vivendi. Vivendi had gained a very bad reputation because of their records in failed privatization and mismanagement. And they were suddenly reinvented under this name Veolia, and a huge advertising budget was spent to create a positive feeling around this new brand name. Of course, advertising is a crucial factor in the way these companies are trying to save their image.
And almost immediately started having service problems, and citizens could not drink the water unless it had been boiled.
There are no clear-cut performance requirements and performance guarantees.
We did require in the contract that they take all of our 550 employees for labor reasons.
They usually slash the workforce, sometimes in half.
So they cut out about 200 employees, and that could have been part of the reason for the service delivery.
They couldn't find out where all the piping connections were. The workers themselves were the people that knew where things were.
The mayor at the time was Bill Campbell, and Suez gave him a $6,900 campaign contribution, but he wasn't running for office. A trip to Paris where he and a female companion stayed in the best hotels and were wined and dined.
Although 2 of the 3 water corporate giants are based in France, and French water has been privatized since the time of Napoleon, a small percentage of French regions have maintained their own water distribution through their